Happy. You suck, you jackass.
All right, folks, Happy Gilmore 2, after almost 30 years, we have a sequel. I was so nervous for this, man. Happy Gilmore is one of my all-time favorite comedies. I am a product of the 90s. That movie is a product of the 90s. So can they recapture it in this legacy sequel? Let's discuss.
30 years ago, I decided to give golf a try.
But even when you're at the top of your game...
So I can't say the plot isn't at least interesting. Here you've got Happy Gilmore coming out of retirement because even though after we saw him last, he went on to have a very successful career, something happens that was frankly shocking. I'm like, oh, they went there and they did that, and I couldn't believe it. But that caused Happy to kind of spiral out of control. He hasn't touched the game of golf since, but now that his daughter has to go to some kind of dancing school or ballet in France, I don't remember. He's got to make some money. He knows the only way he can do that is to get back into the game that got him famous to start with, and that's when our adventure really starts. Now, again, this movie makes some drastic decisions in the beginning, and while I applaud it for not playing it safe with the plot, it could have done the exact same thing over again, and I guess inevitably it kind of does with the quips and the bits and revisiting old characters, and anytime there's a legacy character that's not in the movie, it's either their son or daughter or someone related to them, and it's one of those things where you can see it coming from a mile away. You're going to constantly get nods and references. It almost feels like Happy Gilmore 2 is, well, we could have called it Nostalgia Bait, the movie. If you don't have nostalgia for Happy Gilmore, you won't care about any of this, and I'm curious, if anyone didn't watch the first or just doesn't care about the first, how did you feel about this? Because a lot of this movie's runtime is hearkening back to the old bits and the old characters. That said, plot-wise, they are going in a different direction, and I think the biggest piece of this plot is this new group of golfers that have been literally, physically altered to be like a bunch of clones of Happy Gilmore in the way that they hit their shots. Now, I do feel as if that plot point was so underdeveloped. Like, we'll cut to it every now and then, and Benny Safdie is actually, he's kind of the head of all of this. Yeah, Benny Safdie. A Safdie brother. And I never thought I'd watch a movie where Benny Safdie was tied to the weakest element, but this is absolutely the weakest element. What seemed to be the most interesting on paper when they introduced it ultimately ended up being such a shortchanged plot point where we're spending so much time everywhere else but here, but that ends up being the biggest part at the end. Now we'll get into all the resurfaced bits, returning characters, but I want to keep talking about the new stuff. One element in particular is Happy Gilmore's family. We're talking all of the sons and then his daughter, who's also his real-life daughter, and then his other real-life daughter is another character in the movie, and there was one moment where she said, "You remind me of my dad," and I'm like, she broke the fourth wall. It's unnecessary, but it's sweet. And I don't know how to feel about the sons. I mean, it's like a bunch of mini Happy Gilmores, even though they're about the same size, a bunch of angry dummies that don't know what to do at all times and are there to root on their dad or fight. And I'm like, man, you couldn't have made one of these brothers a little more interesting. They're basically all the same character, and it's tough to differentiate between any of them. Now, I like the relationship that he has with his daughter. That's built-in chemistry from real life. But all of the sons, it's a shtick, it's a bit, it's going to hit for some people. For me, I'm just like, that's when it becomes a cartoon. And if you go back to the OG Happy Gilmore, there are some moments that feel like a cartoon. And it's meant to be over the top. But that is such, again, a product of its time. And since you are making a sequel to such a product of its time, one that I don't think ages all that bad at all. I've seen people who don't think it ages well. Comedy is good. We like to laugh. Did I laugh with the second one? On occasion. Do I wish it felt a little less forced? And what I mean by that is we have to always have a callback or a nod. And this is where I go back to what I mentioned earlier. A famous character from the first, we've got his son. A famous character from the first, we've got his daughter. Or we actually bring him back, like Ben Stiller, Christopher McDonald. There are numerous returning characters here that admittedly kind of capture what they did well. Stiller is funny. Some of the few times where I actually giggled out loud. Christopher McDonald as Shooter McGavin is awesome. He embodies this character. I knew he would bring it. He absolutely did. And those moments between he and Sandler, I'm thinking, both of these guys, yeah, they're representing who they were in the first film, but they're actually giving good performances. And what I will say about Sandler here is, yeah, he's got the comedic thing where he loses his temper and he's actually dealing with alcoholism. There's a sobriety theme to this movie that isn't fully played as a joke, and I actually really appreciate that. But when Sandler has to get dramatic, and I know, it's Happy Gilmore, why do we need that? But when he has to, he's good at it. We know he's a good actor. Uncut Gems, Benny Safdie. So we understand he can do that, and he does a great job. And what I'll give Happy Gilmore 2 is this, even though a lot of it falls flat, it is at least trying a little harder than some of these other Happy Madison Netflix movies. And maybe that's the part of my brain that loves the first one so much, I'm a little more forgiving here than I would be for a Hubie Halloween or Ridiculous Six. Those movies are bad.
This is bad. This is very, very bad.
Then you got some more serious Adam Sandler films like A Hustle. That was one of my favorite movies of that year. And so he's bringing a little more of that serious Sandler to the stakes that are actually really high, not only between the family things that we see at the beginning, that was shocking, but also he needs this money for his daughter. And when he's trying to re-find his happy place in this movie, the stakes actually feel a little higher there. And so I do appreciate that. It's not fully capturing Happy Gilmore in those moments, but it's a nice touch. New characters in here, I actually like what Bad Bunny did. John Daly is surprisingly great. Haley Joel Osment. And then a ton of famous cameos. Your Travis Kelce's, your Post Malone's, your Eric Andre's, Margaret Qualley is in this movie. It's just some of those cameos. I get it, not all of these guys are actors, but they just felt so shoehorned, like, it's Travis Kelce, everyone. And I'm thinking, what's the point?
Why?
A lot of real-life golfers in there, which I do respect and appreciate. But bringing in this new type of golf that Safdie's character is trying to formulate here, and all of these engineered golfer, it's a crazy plot. That was interesting enough, but what I loved about the first Happy Gilmore is when he is golfing and you feel the stakes of every swing, every putt, every drive. I didn't feel the stakes when Happy was actually on the course golfing. It just kind of cuts to it and then cuts away, and we're more worried about building up until the end than actually spending time with Happy on the course. And it tries to make so many jokes one after another in that third act to where, you know what Happy's doing here is important. I just didn't feel that. And the movie spends so much time in other places where I'm like, man, can we speed this up and get to the end? Then I look at the runtime and it's almost 2 hours. I'm thinking, no. The 90-minute runtime of the first Happy Gilmore is perfect. Why did it need to be 2 hours? There's no reason other than to shoehorn in a bunch of cameos. And that's part of why this frustrates me so much. Is, if Happy Gilmore would have really honed in on what made some of those moments interesting, then it could have been a solid legacy sequel. Instead, it's focused on cameos, nods, throwing you back to those moments in the original. The original has that moment at the end where everyone's chasing a character, slow motion, the music's playing. They got to redo that again here. We don't have Chubbs, but we have the son of Chubbs. We don't have Mr. Larson, but it's the son of Mr. Larson. And for all of these characters to be returning, I get it. It's a comedy sequel. We're supposed to be laughing. But so much of it felt reliant on nostalgia, shoehorned in just to be there. And I'm not saying this needed the most cohesive plot, just make me laugh, but I didn't belly laugh nearly as much as I did in the first. I chuckled at times, but this movie really struggled getting me on board with the plot. It tries so hard to do so. Stupidity is great in a sequel like this, as long as it's making me laugh. But again, I wanted to laugh so much more. And for a Happy Gilmore sequel, that is the best medicine, is full laughter throughout the entire thing. And I wasn't laughing as much as they wanted me to.
Oh, good for you.
The glossy Netflix look of it all. Look, it's not the worst shot movie I've ever seen, but it has that distinct look that is not reminiscent of the first, to where I think the first one, the aesthetics, just the look and feel of it all, really captures that time. And I get it. It was 30 years later almost, but visually just kind of feels like all of the other Happy Madison movies nowadays, to be honest. Before I give you my score, what is your favorite Adam Sandler comedy? We may do a ranking on this channel. And did you enjoy Happy Gilmore 2? What is your favorite Adam Sandler Netflix movie? In terms of comedies, this is better than a lot of them, but it's definitely Hustle. Happy Gilmore 2 is exactly what many will expect. This movie is relentless with its callbacks and cameos, full of shoehorn nostalgia, and it leans so heavily into the ridiculousness of it all. overall. To be fair, there are a few aspects that hit, such as Happy's opportunity to make things right, and a few of the aggressive bits that lead to laughter. It could have been much worse, but its reliance on what worked well in the original just doesn't translate to 2025. At least they got the returning characters right. They're just trying to shoehorn so much into this film. It's hard to take it seriously. Not that you need to take a comedy seriously, but I do wish they would have made it its own instead of relying so heavily on what worked in, 1994? 96? 2 years off. That's embarrassing. I was 1 when this movie came out. So, my parents started me young, I guess. Thanks for watching.